Oh my god, I'm so excited. It is time for new Aztez Devplay. It's been about 6 months since the last one. I showed off the build that we took to Evo. Now I'm ready to show off the friends and family build that we made and the last couple weeks in Mexico. Now this shit has come a really long way. I'm not going to show everything off because we're getting to the points where it makes more sense to keep some things under wraps, but I really want to show off the new enemy types that we've created. Now previously, there's been a couple enemies. There's been this boring common warrior type, there's been a boring eagle type, but they've all been beefed up, they've all been given some attack mechanics, and they've all been given some personality. So let's get into this. This environment that you're actually looking at is a hub environment that the friends and family build is comprised of. You can hit any of these enemies to enter this encounter type and try it out for yourself, and there's actually a whole bunch of encounter types that we've created. These ones, your job is to collect blood, which I'll show you in a second. These jobs are to kill everyone that's in the scene very quickly within the time limit. This mission type is to only use counterattacks, which is actually really fun, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to open up the bag on all this shit yet because you'll see it soon, but I just wanted to let you know that that was one of our primary focuses in Mexico, is getting a lot of these combat and counter types built on top of getting the enemies built. So let's get into this. So these are the Eagles. These guys ended up a fucking blast. So in addition to the old jumping spear attack that they've always had, they'll now fly into the air and cut across you in a diagonal line. And it's really fun to look at. It's got a great broadcast, and it just feels so good to, like, you know, get hit by it, if that makes any sense. They also have this one other horrifying attack, where if you're sitting there wailing in the air on someone, they'll stuff you right out of the sky and knock your ass back down to the ground. Now the reason I did this is because in the traditional beat 'em up, 3rd age beat 'em up at least, the air game is actually really safe because most enemies don't give a shit about you once you're up in the air. But if the Eagles are around, you better watch the fuck out. That guy just did a double jump, and he's not supposed to be able to do that. But the point is, that's what they're capable of now. And they're so much fun to fight, especially when you've got 4 of them here and they're just hitting you from all angles. It's really fun to parry these guys, especially now that I've made the counter and parry like way more satisfying and fun to do. Like, it just feels better. It's still as punitive as it always has been, but the effects have been improved, and the feel has been improved. And you can also now parry into the air. So you can do a double parry into the air, which is really fun. You can do the double-sided parry. That's the one that has the warm-up. You can also do a double-sided parry into the air. So these guys just turned out so much fun. And when we were in Mexico, Colin Northway, the creator of Incredipede, with his wife Sarah, they both play the game, and Colin ended up fighting these evil enemies for like hours and hours and hours because he was just having such a blast managing them. But that's the Eagles. Let's get out of this encounter now. These are the Jaguars. Now these guys are horrifying because their attacks completely nullify your block. You cannot block them. All 3 of their attacks that they have will completely stuff you no matter what you're doing if it touches you, and your only option is to parry them. That's all you can do. I mean, you can stuff them before they attack you, obviously, like every enemy type, but the reason they're so horrifying is because your instinct is going to be to block, and they're going to fuck you if you don't parry. And they're really fun. Their tells are still really difficult to like notice and pick out of a crowd, so I got to work on that. But for the most part, these guys are successful in that they are the horrifying enemy, and you got to completely change your shit up once they show up on the scene. So yeah, really happy with the way they turned out. But that's the Jaguars. And these are the priests. These are the 3rd enemy type I made while I was in Mexico. There's going to be more enemy types, but this is like the cream of the crop as far as I'm concerned, because these guys are so much fun, and they're so different from the other enemies. They keep their distance, they're really skittish, and they have a defense mechanic. When you get too close to them, they get freaked out, and they slash on you. Like that. And the knife attack comes out so fast that it's really dangerous if you're not paying attention. Forgive me, I'm really sick. Oh my god, that guy just blew up his own boy. That was hilarious. So that explosion attack, you can't block and you can't parry, and it does a lot of damage. So when you're in a big mixture of enemies, that explosion is like horrifying. But it's so much fun to look at and do and be around that I'm just like so happy with the feel of the priests. But that's the priests. So let's go ahead and move on to a fight with a whole mixture of enemies now. Now before I go into a big fight and just kind of shut my mouth and show you how these fights go down, I want to show you the few new mechanics that we've put in. You're going to need to see these, or else that big fight I'm about to show you isn't going to make any sense. But the biggest thing is that you can now absorb blood and sacrifice. So every continued hit knocks a bunch of blood out of an enemy, and while it's splattered all over the ground and flying through the air, you can hold the left trigger to absorb the blood. And this is going to be a huge system. You're going to use blood for a lot of different things, but it's also a high-risk mechanic, and that's what's so cool about it. So I'm going to sacrifice this guy now. Boom. As you can see, it's an unbelievable amount of blood, and it gives you so much to absorb, and that's the point of sacrifice. You're incredibly vulnerable when you're doing it, but that's the whole point. Now, there is another version of the sacrifice. Remember, you can only do this when the enemy's lost all their health and standing back up in a dizzy state. So once you hear the breaking sound, you know they're ready to be sacrificed. This one is much quicker, but it yields less blood. So you have options. But that's sacrifice. The other thing that you can do now is you can actually jump out of a dash to do this really super satisfying and fun long jump. Now, it's mostly an escape maneuver, but you can do 2 attacks out of it. One is a Castlevania style dodge. That isn't super punitive, but it is something you can do in case you know, are freaked out by the destination of the land. And the other is like a rolling body dive. Now, both of these are really cool, but again, they're not so powerful that like they're going to be the end-all be-all of escape maneuver attacks. But they're there, and they're fun. So now that you've seen those, I'm going to go ahead and bounce into a big fight. I'm going to shut my fucking mouth just so that you can watch the combat encounter with all the different enemy types, and you can see how far this shit has really come.